passe. Oh, l'artiste. Super, encore un but sensationnel. That's a brilliant bit of follow-up play by Mahe. Oh my goodness me, what a shot.
Sagosen setter det hen! Han setter den! De er i semifinale igjen!
Hello everyone, welcome to the Uninformed Handball Hour. It's Chris here and joined by Brian and Alex, all three of us here in the same Zoom room for the first time since the EHF Final Four in Cologne. Hope you're all having a lovely summer, boys, and we are going to talk about something that we promised to talk about a couple of weeks ago, and something a little bit different. Alex?
Yeah, so this is an episode that we mentioned that we would do for everyone. This is on the back of a documentary that was released by Danish TV2 called Mistænkeligt, spil. And I hope my Danish is still good enough to get through that. But essentially it is a documentary about suspicious betting in handball that was carried out. It was an investigation that was carried out over a period of 5 years by Danish journalist Lars Bruun-Mortensen. And we spoke to Lars, who also gave us the opportunity to watch this documentary in English, so I didn't have to rely on my Danish. And we thought that this was a topic that got a lot of interest in the handball community, and it's something that we couldn't ignore. It's a big topic. It's something, match fixing is something that is prevalent in all sports, and we obviously don't want to see it in our sport that we do love. So we wanted to get an insight into what has been going on, and the man to speak to was Lars, who did the investigation. So I think we'll just dive straight into our chat with Lars Bruun-Mortensen.
Lars Bruun-Mortensen from TV2, the star of the documentary. I'm not going to try and pronounce it. Maybe you can pronounce it in Danish for me as you introduce the documentary itself and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, the documentary is called Mistænkeligt, spil in Danish, but if I translate it to English, it's suspicious betting. I think is the most correct way to do it. Well, I'm a handball journalist in Denmark. I have been for 15 years or so, I think. On TV2, which is the national broadcaster, we have the Euros, the World Championships, the Danish League, and so I pretty much cover handball in all my work life, as a journalist and also as a commentator sometimes, and as one of a couple of editors we have who produce and are responsible for the programs we have around the matches in handball. And yes, we did this documentary, and it's been a long way coming, 4 years actually, since we had the first thought and the first meetings about it. A very exciting 4 years, very, in some ways, extremely difficult thing to work with, this theme, but also at times nerve-wracking, because of course it's not something that everybody wants to talk about. But you can see the reason we did the documentary is because we feel like we have so much information looking into this potential match fixing theme that we thought it would be right to publish that information. Obviously, we've tried many times to get in touch and get interviews with the European Handball Federation, and since they were, let's just say, not at all willing to talk about it, we decided that, okay, we have to publish this information and let people for themselves decide what they think it means when they see it.
And so you said the investigation kicked off 4 years ago. When did the idea of the documentary come into play? Because you had also published many articles around that time on TV2. But was it always the goal to actually compile it into a documentary?
Yeah, it was. Actually, the publishing of the articles and refers to the report from Sportsradar back in January was because I didn't feel and some of the others. It's very important, for me to say that I'm not the only one doing this documentary. We're a whole group of people. A few of us were not sure that once we tried, to get people to see this report, to read it. Once we started handing it out to people and saying, please read this, what do you think? We were afraid that, the news of the report, because it was such a big story and such a damaging report that we had got our hands on, we weren't sure that we would be able to hold that story pretty much until we were done with the documentary. So what we decided to do was at the exact moment that we had the chance to give the referees we were going to mention a chance to say something if they wanted to comment if they wanted to. At that point, we decided to publish the stories about the report. So therefore, the reports, what we can say, the publishing of the report ended up being, part of the documentary. It wouldn't have gone that way if we had waited, obviously. But yeah, the goal was always a documentary. But what you need to understand about this is two departments in TV2 working together about a documentary. We have a documentary, people who only do documentaries. I do sports coverage. I do matches and all the things you guys do, also mix zones and press meetings and all that. And at an internal gathering at TV2 4 years ago, that was the first time we had a talk, very informal, about is there some stories we could look at in handball? And obviously we'd heard stories during the years, and stories like these are very hard, obviously to cover because so few people willing to talk about it. So actually that was where it started. But when the time where it really kicked off was, well, as you've seen the documentary, sources began coming our way with stories that made us think, okay, there's something here. And obviously, at the time we got our hands on that report, that was the time when we knew, okay, this is going to end up being a documentary.
So you knew it was going to be a documentary, and it's 2 episodes at the moment. Are there going to be more, or did you always intend for it to be 2? And is this kind of an ongoing thing that you might have a 3rd in the future, or what's the status of it at the moment?
I hope so, but no, there's no 3rd in production right now. Actually, we started out with wanting to do 1 because TV2, massive TV station. There's, of course, you guys haven't seen it on national Danish television, but it was in prime time on Danish TV2 2 Wednesdays in a row. That's not an easy spot to secure when it's about sports. So we started out by wanting to do 1, but quickly realized that it's not possible for us to tell this story in 40 minutes. And the guy, the technician, the photograph, the primary guy who's been my photographer on it was also the guy editing, and he was very quick to say, 40 minutes, it's never going to happen. Give me 2 hours, something. So we ended up with 2 right now, but I can't say for sure there'll be a 3rd, but I hope so, because for us, this it doesn't end here. There's not an ending in that way in the documentary, and you're actually not the first people to ask me, well, when's number 3 coming? Because some people have actually thought, okay, there's going to be a number 3. Not at the moment, but who knows?
This report is central to this whole investigation and the key storyline of it. You give us in the documentary some kind of information on what it involves, but can you give us, like, let's say the too long didn't read version of it for those who haven't seen the documentary yet?
Absolutely. It's a report made by a company called Sportsradar. Sportsradar is one of the world's leading in analyzing, among other things, analyzing betting data. and they are also the European Handball Federation's official partner in avoiding match fixing in handball. And they did this report back in 2018. It involves 26 matches which they suspect of match fixing, and the report focuses very much. The report says, I don't have it here, so I can't quote word by word, but essentially they focus on the referees. They think the referees are the people fixing these games, and it mentions 8 couples of referees and how many matches each couple had of those 26 matches. And that's matches in Champions League, men and women, in the qualification for the Euros, national, some friendly games also, and games in the SEA League. That's basically it. And then I think the rest of the report is then they do what you could call a network analysis on specifically one referee, Georgi Nocheski, the North Macedonian referee, and his ties to known match fixers and people, members of a criminal group called the Gypsy Clan. That's actually what the report is. Yeah, and that was what we had to work with. And Sportradar, as I said, they work together with the European Handball Federation, so they have absolutely no comment to the report. The European Handball Federation has not wanted to talk to us about the report, so it's been quite difficult. And I would also say, because I think that's important for people to know here, when you do stories about handball, you cover all sorts of stories. Also, I saw stories about big transfers and everything else in handball. Of course, there's sources behind stories like that. For me, this report, I heard about it first, and then I had to find it. To find this report has been, without a doubt, the toughest job I had ever in handball, because people, I thought they must know about this report. They must have it. They must have read it. They must have heard about it. They haven't. People very high up in federations around the world hadn't heard about this report at all. And after we published the stories in January, I've gotten several texts and calls from people writing, also people I've never actually talked to. Is there any chance you could give me that report so I have a chance to read what this is all about? Because I've never been presented it to it. And for me, that was, that also made us think, okay, it seems like so few people in the very top of the European Handball Federation who's ever seen this report. Why has it been covered up for 5 years?
And there are some names in that report as well among the referees that are redacted, so are blacked out. And I'm guessing there's a very good editorial reason for that. Could you tell us what it is?
Yeah, we don't focus on the referees in the documentary, so we don't name them. That's pretty much the short answer. But obviously, if I can give a little longer answer, it would be, when we got this report, we said to ourselves, okay, do we have any? How can we verify some of the things in this report? Because it is a report, it's suspicion, a company, a very trusted company of the European Handball Federation are saying these things and warning the European Handball Federation about these people. But before we could have, when we got the report, we could have said, okay, we'll do this story right now. But we felt like we have to try to find out, can we find out more about this? And that's what we've been doing up to the point where we published in January the first time. And you can say the chain. People keep asking me, "Oh, did you prove match fixing now?" And I've repeatedly said every time I've been on thing, no, we haven't proven match fixing. Not in the sense of definitive proof, where you can say there's no doubt we have you here receiving the money, or we have you, this is your bank account you got. We don't have that. We have a lot of circumstantial evidence, but the referee pairs we name are mostly because, well, our assessment is that we have so much circumstantial evidence on these people that we feel like we can name them. very shortly, we named the Croatian pair from a World Cup, one of the couples with most matches in the report. We name obviously the North Macedonian pair with the tie, where Georgi Narciski with the ties to organized crime. And we mentioned, who do we mention more? We mentioned the couple with most matches in the report because they also have ties to matches today. I think what's important to understand for people who haven't read or seen anything is that the matches in the report are from 2016, 2017, so they're actually 5 years old. So one of the things we had to find out was, is this old news or is it still happening? And that's what most of number 2 program is about, making it, current actually in today. So yeah, a long answer to what could be, there is good editorial choices behind.
Part of that you mentioned is that the second part of the report where it links the referee to match fixing organizations, which surprised me in terms of whether Sport Radar is that a service that they always provide. I would have thought of them as more of a data analytics company, but that second part was more of I would have thought would have been out of their field. Is that something that you expected from an organization like Sport Radar?
I didn't really know what to expect, actually. And also when I had the report in my hands the first time, if you read the report, you see pictures taken from social media, some of it with Georgi Narciski, in a picture with people who are in some ways shady, according to the report. My first thought, okay, is this only people, is this only where they look into people's Facebook account? Is that what I'm looking at? Because I can tell you, I have colleagues, who are very much in TV, and many people feel like they know them, who are friends with everybody who asks them on Facebook, so they have 5,000 friends. So can we really say, and that was also, can we really say for certainty that if it's only a Facebook analysis, that maybe Georgi Narciski just said yes to whoever added him on Facebook? So we did do what we could to find out what kind of analysis is this, and it is, according to the experts we talked to, a very, indeed, very thorough network, not only social media, but network analysis of people's lives. Who do they hang with? But I don't know if I'm supposed to expect that from Sport Radar, because we've never had a chance to talk to them about their efforts. That was one of the first things we tried to do, actually, just to answer to make Sport Radar or the federation answer the questions. How do you make these reports? What makes you come to these conclusions you've come to? Can we see the data behind the conclusions? But no, we couldn't. So I guess I was a bit surprised also when I saw, how thorough the reports. I don't remember I don't know if you guys read it or not seen it, but it is the matches and the 8 pairs are just the first couple of pages of the report. The rest is actually the analysis of the network.
Something which comes up in the documentary is this group called the Gypsy Clan. Maybe you could tell us a little bit, because I honestly never heard about them before this report. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about what you've learned about this group and who they are and what they exactly do.
I can't actually tell you that much because we haven't focused that much on them for good reasons, because quite early in the process we were told, be careful about how much you go near those guys. And they've never really been our focus in this, because it could have been any criminal group. But in short, Gypsy Clan is a criminal group known to have been involved in match fixing before, in Italy, among other things, in football. And that's really what we know about them. We haven't done extensive analysis of where are they today and how much involved are they today and what's happening right now, because some of them, as far as what we've, found in our research, some of them are in jail today, and some are probably not. But it's a criminal group, one of probably many from Eastern Europe, known to be guys you don't mess with and guys who are involved in organized crime.
All right, Brian, I think you're going to be hunted down after that question. You mentioned football there, and other sports are mentioned quite a lot in the documentary. It's no surprise that this is a thing that's not exclusive to handball. We've seen in the past sports like tennis, cricket, most recently big news in snooker about match fixing on a player's side. Have you had a chance in all of this to look at like other sports as well and how these kind of allegations have been dealt with and basically what you would expect then to be done in this situation?
I haven't looked at any other sports. No, not really. That could be the number 3 program you're talking about. Perhaps we've obviously gotten. Well, I can tell you, I've gotten quite a few tips about other sports since we published the documentary. And when you ask about, how it's dealt with in other sports, no, we haven't really come to that, you could say, because we're not quite sure how it's been dealt with in this sport yet. We've tried to get that answer, but we can't seem to get the answer, at least not from the people who are dealing with it, the European Handball Federation. We get an answer from French authorities, French police in the documentary about the Euros 2018. We get some answers from people around, handball and match fixing experts, but not what they've actually done in the European Handball Federation. And I think what surprises me in this is one simple thing that we're still trying to get a straight answer on is we asked, did you give it to the police? The European Federation has repeatedly told us we've given it to the police. The police are investigating. We're having follow-ups with the police. But when we ask the police, they don't have follow-ups and they don't have any investigations. And then when we just, to clarify, ask, okay, could you give us the name of the people you're having meeting with at the police? We can't have those names. And so I think it's a very good point you have about, comparing to other sports. But I don't think this story is there yet. We simply have too many questions about this to go on to the perspectives of other sports already.
Yeah, and the second, as you mentioned, the second part of the documentary focuses more on the current side. So after the report, with according to some sources, activity going on still, and I'll reference also the undercover kind of investigation you did with the head of the referees, where part of that, one of the things that came out is that there was almost a fear of Sport Radar, or at least, that since Sport Radar has started working with handball, that this is more difficult and it is kind of being monitored. Do you think that is enough in the sport of handball, that we do have this organization looking out for it?
I think it's important to clarify, just so we don't get facts mixed up. The footage of Dragan, the head of referees, Dragan Novcheski, is from 2020. The report that we published was in January this year. So those recordings are made a few years ago, actually. I would think that when you say the new information we have on today, current, one answer we have gotten out of emails back and forth with the European Handball Federation's media department is that they have new warnings on potentially fixed 5 to 10 matches. I think it was between 5 and 10 matches last year. So they get the warnings. So it seems like the system is in place with Sportradar. Sportradar is a quite serious company. They know what they're doing. So for me, it's not so much about Sportradar. It's about what do you do with the information, and how do you communicate about what you do with the information. One of the things we focus on in program 2 is a referee pair from Kosovo, the brothers of Vitaku, who had the Cadetten GOG match a few years ago, where there was a lot of talk about it being a suspicious match, and a lot of players from the Danish team received calls from Kosovo up to the match and all all sorts of mysterious things. What we did in program 2 is, well, we deliver the proof that they have been involved in several matches who trigger the alarms in these betting, the systems that watch, the monitor the sport. And what's curious to me is their last match was, I think it was a week after we published the first story in January. They had, or it was the same day or day before. It was just around the time where we published our first story in January. They had their latest match in European Handball. They haven't been seen since. They haven't had any matches at all. They had 7-8 matches in the first half of the season, none in the second. And we've asked the European Federation, is this because you found out that, well, what we've shown you here, that this is actually true, you need to do something about these referees? And we can't even get that answer. With the explanation that we don't comment on specific referee pairs. But referee pairs that we have shown repeatedly are in matches that are suspicious, seems like are being removed. The top pair from the report also haven't had a match since February. Maybe it's the same reason. I don't know. I would love someday. Hopefully, I get the answer to that question, and then maybe we have a program free. But if that is the case, that you're actually doing something, but you're doing it in hiding, so you're not doing it publicly. You're not telling the public that you're doing it. Well, is that then because you want to keep the illusion of no problems when it comes to the public talk about handball, and try to fix the problems in-house? Or what is the reason? I hope someday we get that answer.
On the contrary, then, in May of this year, there was the news of Dragan Olszewski being suspended. So that was a public thing, which I think caught a lot of people by surprise at the time as well. Not anymore since the documentary has come out. Connected with that and the fact that you're highlighting all of this last year as well, Handball's Kanalen, that as you said, more information is coming all the time. The fact that this is more public than ever before, do you think that is going to have a real impact on the sport? Because it feels like the more public it is right now, the less likely it is to happen in the future. It may not be the direct, yes, Lars, you fixed handball, that would be nice, but also that could have a real impact in the future in preventing this from happening.
I think absolutely that the more there's focus on this and the more people talk about it, the more people who watch our documentary and I think also sees the patterns behind that go again in the matches that are suspicious. Of course, it will be more difficult for the people willing to try to fix things to do that. They will find other sports with less media coverage and less people watching. No doubt. I would actually say about the suspension of Dragan Olszewski, it actually caught me by surprise. Also, I was not prepared at all. I didn't think that would happen in May, but you could say it did happen because that was the exact time where we, the first time, told the European Federation we had a recording of him, presented them not with the recording, as far as I remember, with some quotes from the recording, and that was apparently enough for them to do that. I don't know where it will end with that. I don't know if he's suspended for good or what's going to happen. Once again, one of the many questions we still have, we can't get an answer to, at least not right now. But yeah, I do think it will have an effect on the activity in the matches, which are suspicious, and that's actually what we've also been told, by the sources we have in the betting industry, that around where, when we published in January, then there was actually quite quiet around matches for at least some time. But then, they still have matches here and there, and it's, as we show in the documentary, it has always been with pretty much some of the same referee pairs again and again. But also, if they remove those pairs, Whether or not they will tell us that's the reason they remove them, but if they remove them, you would assume that the problem will be not as big in the future, hopefully.
One of the lines which kind of stood out to me in the documentary, I think it was the expert Declan Hill who you had on, and he said that for a lot of these referee pairs who maybe are involved with this or potentially involved with this, there's no handing in your invoice or handing in your notice to these gangs, that they kind of, until they're released of their duties, they can be stuck with this kind of shadow over them. Did that stand out to you as a very poignant quote from him?
Yeah, that was not Declan Hill. That was the Danish. His name is Chris Brunau. Danish. Yeah, but yeah, you don't hand in a resignation to a criminal network, I think he says. Yeah, and he's right. And actually, I started out by saying that it was exciting and extremely difficult to do this, but also at times nerve-wracking. And what I mean by that is, there's still a lot of things we don't know. I was the one who approached Georgi Nocheski in Sweden in January. I've never talked to him before. I don't recall ever talking to him before, at least. And I went up to a guy in a hotel who I just read in the report is known ties to organized crimes and all that. That was also, what's going to happen here? Nothing happened. He was, you saw it in the documentary. He didn't want to talk, but it wasn't frightening or anything. But my point is that we don't know how these guys, if they are involved in this, we don't know how they got involved. We basically don't know if a referee is fixing a match somewhere. Is it because they're being threatened by criminals? Is it because whatever they said yes one time, and then the criminals, just like you see in the movies, are blackmailing them or threatening their families? So what do we know? We don't know any of that. So I think he's quite right, the expert, when he says that there is a risk that if you are involved in this, it's not something you can just get out of. And the only reason to get out is that the European Federation removes you, because then obviously you can't help them, the criminal networks anymore with the service you did before. So yeah, it's absolutely a statement that stood out to me also, and I certainly don't hope it's the case that somebody is fixing handball matches because they are under some sort of threat or something.
I think we can definitely say that this is a really great piece of work, really thorough investigation. Just want to understand what has been the reaction from this documentary. You said it was on primetime in Denmark, which is, congratulations for getting such a spot like that. But what has been the overall reaction?
Yeah, primetime during the Tour de France, actually, which surprised us even more. But I think the reaction has been from people involved in handball saying, I'm not surprised. This is what I've been hearing for 20 years. On the other side, people not involved in handball and normal spectators being anything from shocked to surprised to, you got to clean up this now. And I've gotten reactions from, I think, most of the European countries now, and actually also from Australia, for people who wanted to see it. And one of the main reactions I get when it's from people not in Denmark is, how can I see this? Is there any chance of me to see this? How do I get my hands on to watch this? So it seems like there's a very global interest in watching the documentary, and we are. I can tell you that much. I'm not involved in it, so I can't, give you details on it. But I know that there are talks with international TV broadcasters about, an English version to be broadcasted in other countries, But obviously, TV2 is also a commercial TV station, so in the end, that's above my pay grade, so to say. Somebody's talking about whether or not we sell the documentary to other countries. But yeah, it's been a massive response. But I will also say if you start, to scroll my social media accounts to see all this massive response, you won't see half of it publicly online, because every time it's somebody involved in handball, they don't react publicly. They send private text, emails, call me, something like that. So it still seems to me like there's very few people who are willing to go public and say something about this. They're willing to talk to me, in private, in close conversations between just the two of us. But standing out in public and saying something about it still, to me, seems like people are trying to find out, is it wise for me to say something here if I'm involved in handball, or should I just not say anything and let others fight the battles if there are battles to fight?
So that surprised you a bit, that aspect?
Actually, I don't think it surprises me. Everything is politics here. Even if it doesn't matter if you're involved in a federation, if you're a coach, if you're a player, if you're a club, it doesn't surprise me that, everything is what do I get out of saying something? I might have an opinion about this, and I might back, I might find this documentary extremely good, as you say, and something we need to react on. But if I say that, what will happen to me politically if I'm involved in a federation? What will happen to my team or my club if I'm a sports director, a coach, a player, or something? Will it affect me in the next season's Champions League if I say something, and then some of these referees that they have mentioned are the referees in my quarterfinal in the Champions League? I think that is something that people are still, it seems to me like that's something people still think about, sadly. I just hope that everybody who wants to, who are interested in watching this, I've answered people on Twitter the same thing a few times. Call your national TV broadcaster, write them, do something to tell them to, we want to watch this, because I've done everything in my power to see if we could get an international version on the Danish. We have a streaming service. It's called TV2 Play, the Danish. Yeah, but you can't watch that unless you live in Denmark, no matter what we do, sadly. So in order for people to watch it, it needs to be broadcasted somewhere else also. So I hope that, I hope we succeed in that, because I agree with some of the people who have written me. This is a documentary I think many people in Europe should see. And then they can make up their own mind about what it tells and what it not tells. If it's proof or if it's not proof, that's not up to me. That's up to the viewers.
Well, I'm pretty sure this is a story that, whether there's a part 3 or not of the documentary, that will continue in one form or another. But thank you for your work so far in it, Lars, and thanks for talking to us as well.
Thank you too.